Look, I spent a lot of time denying the passage of time, but when the songs of your childhood are getting into the Hall of Fame, it is time to face the music. Drinking in L.A. is a Hall of Famer. Informer by Snow is a Hall of Famer. Today on the podcast, the Songwriters Hall of Fame, the class of 2023. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Listen, the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame has two main jobs. The first one is celebrate the pop songs written or co-written by Canadians. And the second is educate everyone on the history of Canada's great songwriters. Past inductees have included Alanis Morissette, David Foster, and Maestro Fresh West for Let Your Backbone Slide. And now we've arrived at the class of 2023, which includes Bran 3000's 90s classic Drinking in L.A. and this song.
What's up, man? Hey, yo, what's going on, yo? I'm sick and tired of 5-0 running up on the block, you know what I'm saying? Yo, Snow, they came around looking for you the other day. Word, bust it. Informer, you know, say that I'm a stormy, I go blam. I like you, boom, boom, down. Take the man that say that I'm a stormy, stab somebody down the lane. I like you, boom, boom, down. Informer, you know, say that I'm a stormy.
I think this song is old enough to be considered an oldie at this point. This is Informer from East Toronto's own Darren O'Brien. You might know him as his other name, Snow. Joining me now for a brief look at the legacies of these songs. Dalton Higgins is here, and Commotion's own Stuart Berman is here. Dalton, Stuart, welcome to the show. I'm happy that y'all are here. Thank you for being here.
Hey.
A licky boom boom down to you, good sir.
That is the way. That is the way we're going to start all conversations from now on. Dalton, I'm going to start with you on this. Can you take me back to the very first time that you heard Snow's Informer? What was your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, my knee-jerk reaction when I first heard the song was that the chorus was catchy as hell. I mean, that licky boom boom now scat thing Snow's doing, I mean, that right? Super catchy. But the other thing is, I also knew immediately that the song was not being sung by someone who was Jamaican. All right, that was very obvious to me. But that might be because like I just happen to be of Jamaican descent. My parents are Jamaican, so whenever Caribbean people hear someone trying to mimic that sort of Jamaican patois accent or Jamaican nation language, like we can spot it very quickly.
I bet you can. Stuart, what about you? What was your reaction?
It's interesting. This song blew up when 90210 was the big show on TV. And on that show, there was the character David Silver, played by Brian Austin Green, who was like an aspiring rapper both on the show and in real life.
Just a very 90s sentence,
And they kind of look alike, and they had like same haircut, the same sense of style. So when I first saw Snow's video, I was like, is that David Silver dude's rap career taken off before my eyes? But it's interesting, you know, this song arrived in the, I don't know if you'd call it golden age, but like peak white guy rapper era. I mean, you had Marky Mark blowing up, Vanilla Ice, of course. Even Tom Green's crew, Organized Rhyme, were getting some much music airplay with Check the OR. So it felt like Snow was sort of, you know, a part of this ongoing trend where, you know, we were seeing more white rap artists getting like regular rotation.
I'm willing to call it a golden age. I'm willing to hop on board calling this a golden age of sorts. I think it's easy to hear, you know, it's like this white dude from Toronto doing dance hall music, and you go, I don't know about this guy's credibility. But this is a guy who grew up in a neighborhood surrounded by Jamaican music and culture, and also his lyrics on Informer are inspired by his real life experiences. I want you to hear this clip of him talking to Tom Power about seeing the video for Informer for the first time while he's in jail.
The video for Informer comes out while you're in jail. How do you see it?
On Friday and Saturday nights, we get to stay up later and watch movies.
Yeah.
So Rap City would come on in the morning, but it would come on late at night too, right? So after the movie, we get to watch a little bit of the Rap City, all the guys who like that music. So I told a couple people, yo, I heard my video's coming on tonight, right?
Yeah.
And then everybody's out. All the bikers, everybody, they're all staying out waiting. I'm like,
watching the TV.
Yeah, I hope it's me. I hope it's not like Vanilla Ice or Marky Mark or something. No disrespect, but you know what I mean? They come on, I'm dead. I'm finished, right? So now the video's on, and I'm in jail in the video.
Well, that's the thing. You're in jail in the video, watching it in jail.
Yeah, crazy. So everybody, bikers, give me your autograph. Right? Now I'm like, you know, I'm blessed now.
Dalton, it brings me no pleasure to inform you that Informer holds the Guinness World Record for the biggest selling reggae single in U.S. history. It's the highest charting reggae single in UK history. What do you make of the numbers, the feat that this song has managed to accomplish?
Yeah, well, I think that Snow, I mean, he's an absolute unicorn. Let's be real. I just don't see another Canadian dancehall reggae artist going to number one on the Billboard Hot 100 charts. Like, I don't see that happening ever again. Not in our lifetime anyways, right? But with the Snow phenomenon and Informer, what I would also suggest is that there are all kinds of other factors and forces at play that led to his success, right? So Stuart sort of intimated to some of that. I mean, like I do a lot of work in hip hop, dancehall, reggae, and, much in the same way that, the rapper Vanilla Ice, like his song Ice Ice Baby, that was the first hip hop single to go to number one on the Billboard charts, right?
Yes.
So there's this novelty kind of thing. If you read between the lines, let's be realistic, right?
Stuart, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like the Pat Boone effect, from the 50s. People take, the popular black sounds of the day, put a white face on it, and sell 1 million records.
And then suddenly you have a million records sold.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dalton.
But the fact that he's also from Toronto, where Toronto, we have this super influential and large Jamaican community.
Yes.
Right. So that part is makes it even more strange, right? Because we've never been able to produce anything 1/1,000,000th the success of Snow. Given our large Jamaican community. So it's kind of odd. It's an oddball story. Yeah.
It's interesting. One of the other songs inducted this year is Dream Warriors, my definition of a boombastic jazz style, which also got a lot of airplay around the same time. Yeah. And at the time, it was like, wow, okay, this is some amazing hip-hop coming from Canada. This is like our version of De La Soul or A Tribe Called Quest. And you thought, okay, this is the dawn of a new era. And I believe, Dalton, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like another Canadian hip-hop single didn't chart until Northern Touch in 98.
Oh, wow.
So there's this long drought in the 90s, but Snow somehow, got to have his moment in that time.
Oh, he sure did. And that is why he's being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Hey, Stuart, it's been 30 years, more than 30 years. Yes. Are we any closer to figuring out what Licky Boom Boom Down means?
I think that's a job for AI to figure out. I think that goes beyond the means of our human brains.
Oh, my God. All right. Oh, Lord. Okay, it is time to switch gears to this.
And I say, what the hell am I doing drinking in L.A. at 26? I got the fever for the flavor, the payback will be later, still I need a hit. And the girls on the bus kept on laughing at us.
I think Drinking in L.A. by Bran 3000 is on like every one of my driving playlists, and I'm not even entirely sure why. This is another Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame inductee this year. Stuart, what could you tell us about how the song came about? What inspired it?
Well, Bran 3000 was a sort of a collective headed up by a guy named James DeSalvio, who had worked a lot with a Quebecois artist named Jean Leloup, who's kind of this legendary figure in Quebecois rock music, kind of like maybe you might want to call him the David Bowie of Quebec. And James fell into sort of a chunk of change doing a remix for Jean Leloup, and then decided to start a band using this money, get a studio. And apparently Drinking in L.A. is based on a true experience of him waking up hungover on somebody's lawn and actually asking himself, what the hell am I doing here drinking in L.A.? So it's docudrama.
It's and what a docudrama it is. Dalton, let's talk a little bit about the fact that Bran Van was out of Montreal. What was happening in Montreal at the time?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's by accident that Bran Van are out of Montreal. I mean, some of these, and I think Stuart would agree with me here, like a lot of these otherworldly, uber unique music ensembles just happen to come out of Montreal. Like if I think, Nomadic Massive, Arcade Fire, and it goes on and on, right? But when you look at the band itself, its constitution, its membership, again, super Montreal, right? Like you have a Haitian, Jamaican, Anglophone, Francophone members, and then Italian guy from the West Coast, James. It couldn't be any more Montreal.
Stuart, this song came out in 1998. This is a big record, 1998. What was happening in pop at the time that makes a song like this one a hit? Because I don't think you hear this song any other year and go like, oh, this is an obvious hit.
Well, I think they kind of capitalized on, the opening that Beck created.
It's very Beckian, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, someone combining kind of like the slacker indie ethos with hip hop. Beck's Loser was really one of those songs that changed the game overnight. All of a sudden, like every rock band had a song with like a shuffling hip hop backbeat. Like even the Butthole Surfers had a hit with Pepper, which is like pretty much in the same zone. So Bran Van really, kind of capitalized on that. But what I'd say this song does is it kind of takes that slacker mentality, but kind of shows the darker side of it. It's like, you're wasting your life away, and what have I done with my life? I need to do something because I'm just getting older.
Yeah.
I see the song as kind of like part of this holy trinity of like late 90s alt pop jams with like Len Steele, My Sunshine, and New Radicals, You Only Get What You Give, which is just these beautiful sort of like carefree late 90s jams that, kind of remind you of a more innocent, pre 9/11 era.
Yes.
Before everything went dark.
I should apologize to the audience for using an adjective like Beckian. That seems like, I don't know, like too unreasonable to me. So I apologize about that. Dalton, some songs I think reflect the sensibilities of the moment in pop music, and others would work now. Like if somebody dropped them right now, they would still work. Where does Bran Van and like Drinking in L.A., where does that sit on the spectrum for you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, we're referencing Len and New Radicals. I don't think comparable to Bran Van. I don't think the song, I just don't think the song works too well, like on a 2023, like pop, rock, or dance playlist. It does have this distinctly 90s sound, but I'm not convinced that the track carries that kind of timeless, anthem quality necessarily. But given what we see happening on TikTok, I would say that this, the song is like one TikTok post from some bored teenager in Sudbury, away from being rediscovered, so to speak, and, and perhaps re-entering the charts. You know what I mean?
Dalton, if you don't think that song works now, let's never go driving together, because you will hear Drinking in L.A. at some point on our road trips. Stuart, we're going to close this chat with talking about one more inductee in the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame, and that's the classic record from Martha and the Muffins. We got to talk about why, Echo Beach is noteworthy. There are so many reasons why it's noteworthy. We got maybe about a minute left. Can you give us one of those reasons before we play it?
Well, my first experience with pop radio as a kid was like in the early 80s, and it was like the prime new wave era where you had like the Police and the Clash and Blondie and Talking Heads and all these bands putting out these great songs. And Echo Beach fit right in there. And it was like one of the only Canadian songs to kind of like stand up alongside those giants. And, it was an international hit. I think it was like the first song to come out of like the punk alternative scene in Canada to have like an international impact. So for that reason alone, it's an essential song. And on top of the fact, it's just still amazing and catchy as hell and just puts you in a good mood.
There you have it. The class of 2023 for the Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame. Dalton, Stuart, I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
I know it's out of fashion and a trifle uncool, but I can't help it. I'm a romantic fool. It's a habit of mine to watch the sun go down on Echo Beach. I watch the sun go down.
A bit of Echo Beach from Martha and the Muffins. That song, along with my definition of a boombastic jazz style from the Dream Warriors, Snow's Informer, and Bran Van 3000's Drinking in L.A. are being honored today in Toronto. Before that, you heard my conversation with music journalist Dalton Higgins, and also music journalist and producer on this very show, Stuart Berman. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and this is Commotion. Listen, if you were born before 2005, you probably remember Calvin and Hobbes. It's that comic strip about a 6-year-old boy named Calvin and then his talking stuffed tiger Hobbes. Calvin and Hobbes became, I would say, a daily part of people's lives in the late 80s. That is until 1995, when the creator of the comic strip, Bill Watterson, ended the comic and then just kind of disappeared. For decades, he turned down interviews. He became known as a bit of a recluse. And now he's back. His new picture book is called The Mysteries, and it's probably not what you'd expect. I spoke with Michael Hingston about this. Michael wrote a book about Bill Watterson and the making of Calvin and Hobbes. Here's Michael taking us back to 1995 when Bill Watterson's cartoon ended. I wanted to know why you'd pull the plug on something at the height of its popularity.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is, at least to take him at his word, is that he was done. And, you know, it's a pretty big grind to make a daily comic. People in that line of work, they don't really take vacations. So it's really something you got to get up for every morning. Oof. And Watterson did it for 10 years off and on. And at the time, he said he was just kind of interested in other things. So he mentioned things like landscape painting and something about the history of music. Mm-hmm. So that was his interest, just seemed to wander. But the fans didn't take it that well, and I think it's mostly because of the way he left.
Right.
Watterson seemed kind of like indifferent about it, almost like the strip didn't mean as much to him as it did to the people reading it.
Right.
And so I think it left fans feeling a little hurt, and there's kind of a rift there that's kind of dogged Watterson ever since.
Well, I was going to say, like, you do something every day for 10 years. It's bound to, at a certain point, become like, oh, this is a job. You know what I mean? Like, I'm here for a job, and I'm now going to shift directions and maybe go somewhere else. But he didn't just end the comic. He has kind of become known for rejecting fame, for kind of receding from the limelight. Let's talk about his reputation.
Yeah, I mean, Watterson, I think if anyone knows him at all, I think the number one thing that comes to mind about him is he's a principled guy. Maybe to a fault. So when Calvin and Hobbes was at the height of its fame, and he left when it was at the height of its fame, this was an era, you know, mid 90s, huge merchandising dollars to be found in the world of comics. So, you know, Peanuts, you'd see their faces on everything. Garfield being the biggest example, you know, he was on everything from lunchboxes to like toilet seat covers. And Watterson got these huge offers and turned them all down. In my book, I talked to Watterson's former editor, and he estimated that Watterson personally left tens of millions of dollars on the table just because he felt like he didn't seem motivated by money. I guess he had enough of it. And he felt that these deals didn't add anything to the strip. In fact, he felt that they took away from it or they distracted from it. And so he just seems to have, he didn't seem to be tempted by those big dollar signs. And so kind of walked away from it. In the process, I think that gave him a bit of reputation of being a little prickly because he wouldn't just go along with what would make everyone money. He didn't really like talking to the media. So, you know, his reputation kind of took hold in those years. And, you know, since 1995, he's kind of carried on in the same lane. We haven't heard from him talking in public a lot. He has popped up maybe more than people might think, but it's always these small projects, one-offs, really according to his own whims and his own interests. So it's very hard to figure out sort of, you know, where his mind is at any given point. And, you know, people don't know where he lives or what he looks like. So there's an air of intrigue around him, to be sure.
Listen, he's back. This is the big deal here, is that Watterson is back. He's back with a picture book called The Mysteries. Let's describe this picture book for people who have not read it yet.
Yeah, so like you said, I mean, it's a picture book. So right away, it's something different for him. Yeah. And yet I wouldn't say it's necessarily for kids. Calvin and Hobbes was enjoyed by adults, but The Mysteries definitely has a darker tone in ways even than the comic strip did. Maybe it's more like a minimalist graphic novel or something like that. Yeah. It's basically the story of a medieval-ish society who are terrified of these things called the mysteries. We never see what they are on the page. And then at one point they go out, they capture one, and they realize there was nothing to be scared of. And then they live their lives very confidently, no longer in fear of these things. And yet it's quite a spare book. It's quite a cryptic book. And so there's also a sense that in being a little overconfident that they've gotten rid of these mysteries, there's maybe sort of a unintended consequence looming just over the horizon.
The images are quite striking. They are nothing close to related to Calvin and Hobbes. You're a fan of Calvin and Hobbes. What did you think of it when you saw it?
I mean, I can't say I saw this coming. I don't think anyone did. Yeah. So, I mean, at first glance, it's a huge departure, in large part because Watterson actually doesn't do the artwork in this. You know, he's just the writer. He's working with a separate illustrator for the first time. So if you think of that daily newspaper grind where Watterson had total control over the strip, he did everything. Yeah. This is very different. This is a sort of 50-50 collaboration. It's also, you know, it's a total opposite of the daily grind as well, because by his account, they worked on this book for a decade and not smoothly. It was a real back and forth with So it was this real sort of exercise in creative collaboration. I don't know if they even thought it was going to be published at certain points. They were disagreeing on it so badly. And yet, that being said, I think there are some kind of thematic similarities. Calvin and Hobbes is about the gray area between truth and fantasy. The great trick of the strip is you never know if Hobbes is quote unquote real or not. Mm-hmm. And it's about preserving this sense of play and ambiguity. The Mysteries has a similar message, I think, in that when these humans are so sure that they've dispelled the mysteries, suddenly the imagery flips and now they're in the modern day, driving in cars on modern highways. And again, there's this sense that the universe is going to course correct on this, and that maybe we shouldn't be so quick to pursue logic and rational thinking, to the nth degree.
So you mentioned that we don't really hear from Watterson much, but after so many years of refusing interviews, he recently did this video with a collaborator of the new book, Don Kosh. They explained the process. Let's hear a clip from that.
Our process was appallingly inefficient and wasteful. We were basically drawing the map as we wandered around lost. But when you're lost, pretty much everything is surprising.
Appallingly inefficient. That is also how I describe my work process, but, I'm not that reclusive. This is likely the most that his fans have ever heard him talk about his work. What did you make of the video when we finally got that video?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating look at two people who are, two incredibly talented people. They seem to fundamentally disagree about what this story should look like. And yet, over the course of years of revision, they come up with this, surprising synthesis for their ideas. I don't know if you'd get that reading the final product, just how much collaboration and sort of creative tension went into it. The other thing that comes through is just Watterson is just such a smart, charming guy. And this is one of the things people loved about the interviews he did do in the Calvin and Hobbes days, is it's just a pleasure to hear him talk about how he thinks about making art.
Mm-hmm. Michael, before I let you go, we got to say, we are in this real moment of adaptation and merchandising in art. I mean, Barbie is one of the biggest movies of the year. Mattel is set to make way more like it. How do you think the story of Bill Watterson and his work fit into where we are culturally right now?
Yeah, I mean, even in the 90s, Bill Watterson was kind of an anachronism in terms of those principles we talked about.
Right.
So it's saying, no merchandising, no Hobbes stuffies. I mean, that was unusual then, and it feels totally out of step now. He was worried about sort of the line between art and commerce, and we live in a place now with sponsored content and viral marketing where that line literally does not exist. So I think Watterson was, fans of the strip, love him even more now because he was proven right in hindsight. He took a stand at a time when very few people were, and seems to have seen where we were headed before we got there, to the point where I think even the premise of Calvin and Hobbes is kind of outdated now. If you had a 6-year-old boy in America today walking around with a stuffed animal trying to imagine a life for it, it wouldn't be this nondescript tiger that he could invent a personality for. It would be a Spider-Man plushie. It would be a Disney plushie.
Yeah.
So it's, even the idea of having kids having that sort of imaginative space that's free from intellectual property, we're well past that now as well.
Michael, I appreciate you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Michael Hingston wrote Let's Go Exploring, a book about Bill Watterson and the making of Calvin and Hobbes. He was in Edmonton, and Bill Watterson's new book, The Mysteries, is out everywhere. That is it for the podcast today. By the way, tomorrow we are talking about the Beatles. We're talking about a brand new song from the Beatles, which is an extraordinary sentence to say out loud. Remember, you can listen to any episode of Commotion anytime you like, wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. I'm going to be here tomorrow, and I sure hope that I'm going to see you then.